Welcome to the Brothers in Crime podcast.
We are brothers.
We talk about true crime.
We don't take ourselves too seriously.
And you shouldn't either.
The Ewell family lived in Fresno, California. In 1992, Dale Ewell was 59 years old, married with 2 adult children. Dale was an Air Force veteran who owned and operated a successful business selling small airplanes. And we're not talking about like Matchbox car small airplanes, but just, 1 or 2 passenger airplanes. Among his sales strategies, he would fly a plane to a farm to show it to the farmer, sell it to him, and then teach him how to fly it as part of the package. Small airplanes do have some uses in agriculture, and this is my rare opportunity to say crop dusting in a true crime story.
You crop dust me every time you leave this room.
Oh, nonsense. In addition to selling airplanes, Dale had invested in farmland and real estate. And between those investments and selling planes, he had built up a nice net worth of around $8 million at that time.
Dang.
Which in 1992 to today's dollars would be about $18 million. Dale's wife was 57-year-old Glee Ewell, who'd been a teacher and at one point worked for the CIA, but in recent years she was focused on volunteering, philanthropy, and civic engagements. She was involved with the Valley Children's Hospital, Civil Service Commission, County Grand Jury, museums, and various charities. In 1985, the governor appointed her to the State Bar Board of Governors as a public member, where she served on the Judicial Nominees Evaluation Commission.
Is there anything this woman didn't do? I mean, she taught, she worked for the CIA, hospitals, commissions, museums, and the Judicial Nominating Committee. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know that she had time to sleep.
Right?
Friends and family and the other people that knew her described Glee as friendly and outgoing, along with other complimentary adjectives that I frankly have never been accused of.
I mean, I would expect nothing less from a woman named Glee, and as far as you're concerned, you've been complimented. There was that time in 99 or whatever.
That's possible. The 96 to 2003 is all a little bit of a blur to me, so maybe. Anyway, the Ewells were doing really well, but they valued their privacy and they didn't make it a habit of flaunting their wealth. I'm sure nobody mistook them for being destitute or anything, but, people with money often get accustomed to their means, and broke folk like me can spot money a mile away, just in the subtle details. The Ewells weren't flashy, and although they may have enjoyed the life that money afforded them, it doesn't seem like they treated money as a symbol of the validation of their existence. They had 2 kids. Their daughter, Tiffany, was 24 years old in 1992, and she was a graduate school... No, she was at a graduate school. She wasn't actually a graduate school.
You done put vodka in your cornflakes today again, didn't you?
I think it's a cold medicine. So she was at a graduate school, Cal State Fresno, studying accounting. She was really smart and a good student, and the word that comes up over and over about Tiffany is sweet. People just seem to love her.
You love sweets, so y'all have something in common.
We do. The Ewell son, Dana, he was 21 at the time, and he was a prick. People that knew the Ewell family and described Tiffany as sweet and kind said that Dana was the exact opposite. He was smart, with an IQ ranging from 165 to 180, depending on what you read, but he had a hard time making friends. He didn't have many friends, but the mother of one of them described him as insecure and said he tried to buy his friends. Others said the way he tried to attract people was just sad. Shaylee Erickson, a friend of Tiffany's, describes a time when they were kids where she and Tiffany were playing with Barbies, and Dana came in and ripped the heads off the dolls. As the kids grew up, she said he became very arrogant and just lied about everything.
I mean, you're telling me you never ripped a head off a Barbie?
I don't think so. Not that I recall.
Well, maybe during that time period from 96 to 2003 you did, and you just don't remember it.
That could be. Her characterization of an arrogant liar fits with what many others saw of Dana. At Santa Clara University, where Dana was a business major, he told people that he had been a stockbroker since he was 18 and made a lot of money selling mutual funds. He convinced the yearbook staff to include a feature section about him and his accomplishments, which included owning his own aircraft dealership that he had turned around from near bankruptcy to a multi-million-dollar success. In case you missed it, that was his father's company and accomplishments. Dana drove a gold Mercedes, wore fine suits, and projected an image of being a wealthy, successful businessman. And if somehow his flaunting was too subtle for people to pick up on, he would flat out tell them what he spent on his outfit and how successful he was.
Gold Mercedes. A gold Mercedes. I heard that right?
Yep, that's what it was.
Okay, that's special.
This persona he made up seems entirely unnecessary. He had a very good life. His parents gave him an $800 a month allowance, equal to about $1,700 a month today. And it bought him that gold Mercedes as a graduation present. Actually, the one he was driving was a second Mercedes they bought him. He wrecked the first one, and according to reports, Dale didn't want anybody to know about that, so he went out and bought Dana an identical replacement.
Oh, good grief.
I don't know how things were when you were a teenager. Mom and Dad were older and you wore them out, but my allowance was that I was allowed to live in their house and I was allowed to pay them rent. I could have any car I wanted as long as I bought it my damn self and paid for the insurance. By the time I was Dana's age, I had a wife, a mortgage, and a kid.
Well, Mom and Dad were older when I came along, for sure. But that really didn't change the allowance thing. I remember asking about it once when I was younger, and the response was that I wasn't going to get money just because that's not how the world works. And so if I wanted money, I needed to figure out a way to earn it. And they probably were a bit softer with me than they were with you. But I mean, I was doing landscaping jobs on my own by the time I was 14, and I had to save up my money to buy a car and to pay for the insurance and to take care of it and put gas in it and all that stuff. So Dana's $800 a month allowance, his 2 gold Mercedes, and all that other stuff you just said is crazy. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had things pretty good. I don't see a need to worry about making up any kind of stories.
I mean, he could afford 5 guys. That's when you know you got money.
Right? I mean, all in all, it sounds like the biggest problem the Ewell family had, aside from their son being a prick, is that they were not able to walk into a Kmart and buy those vanity tags for their bicycles that had their names printed on them. See, back then, we didn't have Etsy or Amazon or any of that stuff, and there were no Crickets to customize everything. So in the department stores, there'd be a rack of small license plate-looking things with names on them. The trouble was, they only had the most popular names like Mary and David and Johnny and Sally. So if your name was Glee or Dana or anything else like that, you were out of luck. Maybe that's where Dana's resentment come from. Or maybe they had Dana, but it was only in the pink plates and not the blue. The Ewell family spent Easter weekend in 1992 at the beach house at Pajaro Dunes outside Watsonville.
What state are we in? Where is that?
You're in California.
Oh, okay. So that's where they are. And then their beach house, which is probably, I don't know, 1 of 10 or something ridiculous. This is also in California?
Yeah, they lived in Fresno, and the Pajaro Dunes beach house is in California as well.
I'm sorry. It sounds like you've been there a few times. I didn't know what it was.
Nope. Seen it on a map once. That's the extent of it.
You don't have a beach house there, too?
No. Glee and Tiffany drove over from Fresno. Dale flew one of his planes in, and Dana drove down from the university. Dana and his girlfriend, Monica Zent, arranged to have their families meet for the first time, so the Zents drove over from Morgan Hills, also in California, and spent the day Saturday at the beach house with the Ewells.
Could you imagine the Ewell-Zent wedding? I mean, the announcement.
Yeah. I imagine the whole spectacle would have been something.
Right.
Anyway, on Easter Sunday, Dale and Dana played tennis in the morning, and then the family enjoyed lunch together and a walk on the beach. I mean, that's what everybody does on Sunday mornings, right?
Mm-hmm.
That afternoon, Dana left to go spend the evening with his girlfriend, Monica Zent, and her family in Morgan Hills before the couple returned to school. Glee and Tiffany drove home to Fresno from the beach house, and Dale flew back, arriving home shortly after Glee and Tiffany. So, Glee and Tiffany drive the car and go home from the beach house. Dale hops in his plane and goes home. Dana's back to see the girlfriend and then back to school.
Okay, so if I just to be clear, I'm glad you are summarizing, but Dad, Glee, and Tiffany are heading home to the same place.
Yes.
Just different means of transportation.
Yeah, they're all headed to the same house, and Glee and Tiffany arrived first. They drove. Dale took a little longer with his airplane, but he got there a little bit after them.
That seemed a little bit backwards, but I mean, I guess I get what you're saying. It just, you think if you're flying, you get there quicker.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're only talking about, hours, I think it's like 3 maybe hours apart. the airplane, you got to go to the airport and do all that, whatever. I don't know, airplane-y stuff.
All that rich air pilot thing, all those things.
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha. All right. Sorry. Continue.
So Sunday evening, Dana calls the Ewell home in Fresno, but he gets no answer. Monday, he called again, and still no answer. He told his girlfriend's father, who was an FBI agent, that he was concerned. He also talked to Marlene Reed, the business manager of Dale's airplane dealership. Marlene said she'd spoken to Dale on the phone around 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, but had not been able to reach him since, and that Dale didn't show up to work today, Monday. Marlene suggested that Dana contact a neighbor to go check on the Ewells. He didn't that day, but the next day, Tuesday, Dale didn't show up to the office again, and Marlene was still unable to reach him. At this point, she was really concerned because all this was highly unusual. And so Dana contacted a neighbor to go check on his parents and his sister.
How far away is Dana? Like, I'm just wondering, is he so far away that it would be really impractical for him to just go check on him himself?
Again, I've never been there, but my understanding is he was 3 or 4 hours away.
Okay, so like if I thought, maybe you're supposed to be somewhere on Monday and it's Tuesday and they haven't seen you for 2 days, I'd probably get in my car and drive 3 hours to make sure, like, you didn't get, kidnapped or you're unalived.
Well, I mean, you might, unless you already know and just can't be the person that officially finds out.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, so the neighbor and the Ewell's housekeeper, one of them, arrived at the Fresno home around the same time. As they entered the home, it was obvious to them that something was big wrong.
Mm-mm.
The house had been ransacked, and Tiffany was dead, face down on the kitchen floor with a gunshot that entered the back of her head and exited her forehead.
Oh, poor sweet Tiffany.
Dale was dead, face down on the hallway floor with a gunshot wound to the back of the neck that exited under his right eye. Glee was dead, partly on her back and partly on her left side, lying on the floor of the office. She'd been shot 4 times, including one round that entered her face under her eye and exited through the back of her head. It appeared that Tiffany never saw the shooter, but was killed as she walked past the gunman's location. Investigators believe Glee attempted to run for cover and was pursued by the killer, which is why there were so many shots.
It is interesting. You would think, initially when you said that, I thought maybe somebody, had an axe to grind with her more than the rest of them, but I guess that would make sense too if she was on the move and was a harder target.
Yeah, it also appeared that Dale was shot from behind, perhaps unaware that a killer was present. Since Dale arrived home a half hour or more later than the ladies, this means that the killer waited in the home after killing Glee and Tiffany with their bodies until Dale arrived. Who does that? But does that mean then that Dale was the primary target? Police immediately thought the home was staged to look like a robbery gone bad, but valuable items like Dale's gun collection were left behind, while cheap items like tape cassettes were piled on a bed sheet on the floor, in such a way to suggest the robbers were in the midst of gathering their haul but abandoned the robbery when the Ewells came home. Bed sheets were an unusual way for a thief to carry loot when pillowcases, which were readily available, would have been much more practical. Also, drawers were another clue. Detectives noticed that there was no pattern to how the drawers were left in the Ewell home. Good burglars, they said, start at the bottom drawer and move upwards, so they don't have to waste time closing drawers they've already searched to get to the next one.
Well, maybe this was a bad burglar.
It's possible. Entirely possible. The detectives investigating the case were experienced in working robberies, and nothing about the scene looked like a real robbery, at least not by a good robber. They were convinced the Ewells were killed for a reason. They just didn't know the reason or who had that reason. Police believed the murder weapon was most likely a 9mm, but there were no shell casings to be found. They did find one unexpended round and a box of 9mm ammo on the floor in the bedroom. The box of bullets was usually kept in Dale's nightstand, along with a Browning pistol. The Browning pistol was not found at the home, though.
Hey, for those who might not know, when you say Browning pistol, is that like a particular type of pistol, or...?
It means it is turning brown.
Oh, okay. Good. All right, so now you guys know. That's a pistol that's going brown. You're just going to leave them with that? So that's like a Glock or a Ruger, or it's a brand, like a manufacturer. So Browning is a manufacturer that made this particular pistol. So that tells us, who made the gun. It'd be like a Chevy or a Ford, but we're talking about guns, so...
Yeah, because Chevy and Ford don't make guns that I'm aware of.
I don't think so.
Based on the lead and the tool marks, the firearms examiner was sure that the rounds that killed the Ewells came from this box. Now, there was a price sticker on the box from a local hardware store, and amazingly, the hardware store owner kept paper receipts from every transaction and still had the receipt for a Browning pistol and a box of 9mm ammo that he sold to Dale Ewell in 1971. While they were confident it was Dale's bullets that had been used, they were also confident that it was not Dale's gun. The firearms examiner saw some odd scratches on the bullets used in the murder and believed they were imparted by a silencer or sound suppressor that had holes in it. Despite his 25 years of experience, he had never seen this pattern before and couldn't reference the make or model of firearm that caused these. He sent enlarged photos of the markings to forensics labs all over the country, but nobody recognized them. For the most common guns, firearms examiners often know by the number of lands and grooves and whether they see a right or left-hand twist what the make and model of projectile was fired from. For less common guns, there's plenty of reference material to match the projectile with the weapon, but despite what Hollywood shows us, the use of silencers is very rare. It's almost unheard of in a burglary gone wrong. And this contributed to the investigators' theory that someone came to the Ewell home to kill, not to steal.
Are you trying to be punny? The use of silencers is rare. It's almost unheard of.
Huh. Hey, I made a joke and didn't know it.
But seriously, on a more serious note, and this is ticky-tacky, I know, but they're actually suppressors. They're not silencers. People commonly call them silencers, but they don't silence the sound. They suppress it. There's still sound. It's just suppressed. So.
Okay. Duly noted your correction there.
I knew you'd feel some kind of way about that, but...
Police noted that there were no signs of forced entry to the home, and the alarm, which was normally armed, was off and hadn't been triggered. This was not a situation like we've had in other cases where they had an alarm but never used it. They used the alarm in the Ewell home, but it wasn't on this day. The forensics folks also found these bright yellow or green fibers on Glee's body and on the carpet in the home underneath her body where she had been shot. They weren't sure how or if those findings fit into the puzzle, but the firearms guy felt really strong that these fibers had something to do with the suppressor he suspected was used.
So they out here looking for Big Bird or what?
Maybe. I don't know what his alibi was for that evening.
Right.
Now, if Dale was the primary target, what was the motive? Sure, selling planes and owning real estate meant that there were probably people that, weren't too happy with him. Maybe not going to send him a Christmas card. There could be unhappy airplane buyer or a repo or eviction or something, but there were no major confrontations that anybody was aware of. The man that owned the airplane dealership prior to Dale was convicted of smuggling tons of wacky weed from Mexico on the planes he was selling, and that interesting tidbit led to a theory that the murders were the work of someone in the drug business. But Dale had taken over the business in 1972, so it'd be kind of odd for dealers or the cartel to wait 20 years to take out a family that wasn't even involved in their grass transplant service.
Yeah, I think they move a little more swiftly than that.
Right? Now, what about Glee? She seemed like a pretty unlikely target, but she had worked for the CIA at one point, and that fact conjures up all kinds of theories.
It was a guy on the grassy knoll.
Oh, not just one guy. In fact, Dana made a point to mention this to the pastor at the memorial service that Glee had worked for the CIA in Argentina. And the pastor shared that tidbit with the press and wondered out loud about the possible connection. But it turns out that Glee worked for the CIA as a Spanish translator in the 1950s. She wasn't a covert operator, and surely if someone didn't like the way she translated, they would have come after her sooner than 40 years later. No one could find any reason that Tiffany would be the target for an execution. Everyone she met in her short life seemed to love her, and she had zero connection to drug smugglers, the CIA, or anything else that sounded tantalizing.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like anybody's coming after Sweet Tiffany.
No. And although he was a prick, it didn't seem like Dana was the target of this hit. He was safe and sound with Monica and her family in Morgan Hills at the time of the murders. Remember, her family includes FBI agent John Zent. Mm-hmm. So unless the killer was just really bad at recon, it wasn't someone trying to get Dana.
Right.
It was a bit of a mystery, but things started coming into focus when Dana got the attention of investigators, family, and friends, even the medical examiner, for all different bad reasons. During a walk through the house with detectives, Dana didn't appear to be bothered by the bloodstains, but became openly aggravated when he found some damage to a light fixture and a rug or something. He asked if the police caused those damages while processing the scene and told the detective he expected them to take care of it.
This dude is a turd.
Pretty much. He began spending money like it was going out of style. He bought expensive gifts for his girlfriend and bought himself a $130,000 airplane.
Oh, why not?
Dale's brother, Dana's uncle, got a copy of Dale and Glee's will, hoping it included instructions about their burial and memorial services. When he read the will and told Dana that there wasn't anything in there about the burial instructions, Dana's response was something along the lines of, okay, what about the money? See, Dana knew exactly what his parents were worth. He had helped his father prepare a statement of net worth less than 2 weeks prior to the murders. He assumed that with his parents and sister dead, he'd get the whole $8 million.
Oh, sounds like there is about to be a but in this story.
Yeah, Daddy Dale threw a big old butt in Dana's plans. His uncle read the will and explained that Dale and Glee had set up a trust, and until he was 25, his living and education expenses would be paid for, but any payments were at the discretion of the trustee. Between the ages of 25 and 30, he would be paid all the income that came into the trust, but any payouts of the principal would be up to the trustee. At the age of 30, half the principal would be paid out to Dana, and at 35, the remaining half would be paid out. He was pissed. He pounded on the table as he lurched out of his chair, asking why his father did that.
Now, I can tell you why Daddy Dale did that. Because he knew if he passed his wealth on to this turd in a lump sum, Dana would blow that money quicker than the Wolf of Wall Street burned through a small mountain of blow.
There you go. What he found out was all that was going to happen for the next few years was he's going to get his living and education expenses covered. Okay. Not what he wanted to have his persona of the big shot businessman.
Not when you're buying $130,000 airplanes the minute after your family's murdered.
Right. At the memorial service, while receiving mourners in the line, he stopped his dad's former secretary to admire a diamond ring she was wearing, flipping it over to see the whole thing and telling her it was a huge rock and asking where she got it and how much it cost.
That's weird.
Right. Dana contacted the medical examiner several times, interrogating them about their progress and details of their findings of the injuries to his mother, father, and sister. It's not unusual for family to contact the ME, but it's more common when the cause of death is not immediately known and trying to get answers of what happened or what caused their death.
Right. Like, I get if there's mystery, right? Like a loved one passes, or you're concerned that maybe they were murdered and you don't know and you're trying to understand the circumstances because it's not clear. But in this case where I would assume police have said like, hey, your whole family's been shot, they've been executed. What's he asking? Like, how big is the exit wound? I mean, that's just creepy and weird.
Right. Yeah. It was weird to the medical examiner's office as well. They'd never experienced anything quite like this fella who seemed to think he was everyone's boss. Dana was supposed to be staying with one of his uncles after the murders, but he left there after a few weeks. He told the executor of the estate that he was staying with friends in the neighborhood, but he was actually staying in the house where his parents and sister had been killed. He even gave a tour to his friend Poindexter, and at the time of the tour, there were still bullet holes, blood, and what appeared to be brain matter that hadn't been removed.
You ever had a friend named Poindexter?
The only Poindexter I've ever known is on Revenge of the Nerds.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think real people were named that. No offense, if your name's Poindexter and you're listening, send us a message or check us out on socials. I'd be interested to know.
Honestly, I'm envious.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, I mean, that's a unique name. I like it. So investigators take note of Dana's odd behavior, and they see the money as the motive, but he has an airtight alibi. He was with his girlfriend Monica, her mother, and her father, FBI agent John Zent, at the time of the murders, and they're hours away. There's no way he could have pulled the trigger. Agent Zant didn't just confirm Dana's whereabouts at the time of the murder, he seemed to be solidly in Dana's corner. The Fresno Bee published a letter to the editor from Zent declaring Dana's innocence and criticizing the sheriff's office for pursuing Dana as a suspect when he was, according to Zent, a victim. Detective Souza, one of the investigators on the case, was pretty irritated by Zent's letter and hung it above his desk as an additional motivation to solve the case.
Zent's telling them they need to be out here looking for Big Bird.
Right, go find the real killer. Despite the alibi, police pursued Dana because even though it seemed he couldn't have pulled the trigger, everything about this smelled of an inside job, and Dana was the only one alive from the inside. Detectives started looking into Dana's life and the people he associated with, and they followed Dana as often as possible and made sure he knew it. In return, he often employed evasive driving maneuvers to avoid being tailed.
Well, if he's still rolling that gold Mercedes, it shouldn't have been too hard to tail and find this guy.
Yeah, and, I guess he could avoid them just hop in his airplane and go somewhere, but who knows? While they're doing their surveillance, they notice that Dana's spending time with Joel Radovich, a former roommate at Santa Clara University. For a period of time, Joel even moved in with Dana at the home where the murders occurred. They, at one point, asked Joel some basic questions, and he acknowledged that he knew Dana, but said that they didn't really spend any time together outside of school. And now when police threw this softball question at Dana, asking, how he knew Joel, Dana denied that he ever even met him.
Uh-oh, we got a red flag.
Yeah, that certainly doubled down police's resolve to make something happen here. Dana and Joel were each taking helicopter flying lessons, which cost up to $500 an hour. Joel's lessons were paid for in cash, even though he did not have any known source of income, or via checks written by Dana.
Don't you have a helicopter flying lesson later today?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. At some point, they noticed that Joel would go to a payphone outside a convenience store, look down at his hip, and then make a phone call. They surmised he was looking at a pager and dialing the number from it. They quickly learned he was talking to Dana.
I mean, for people who are, younger than me, you want to explain what a pager is? Because I'm pretty sure you had one back in the day.
I absolutely did. It even survived the saltwater of the beach one time. But
wow.
Back in the day, there was no such thing as a cell phone. If you wanted to call someone, you had to call them at their home or office, and if they weren't there, you either try another time or leave a message. The best technology we had was a pager, which from any of those landline phones you had, if somebody was, say, out and about, running around, you could dial their pager number and then put in your phone number for them to call you back. So when you looked at this little pager, the only thing you'd see was a number, like whatever numbers they'd put in. For the most part, the intent was put in your phone number. So the pager beeps, you look down at it, there's a phone number on there, it means call that number. Mm-hmm. Now, people would add things to the phone number and add codes to the end of it. I know my friends and I had certain codes that meant certain things, so in addition to just looking like, here's Bob's phone number, there'd be something at the end of it that would say it's an emergency or whatever. We had different
So you like
codes.
911 or 420 or just, whatever you put on there.
You may laugh, but in my friend group, the urgent code was 187.
It's fitting that you're co-hosting this podcast now.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, this is like some real The Wire shit going on here with the pagers.
What a great show.
So the police used undercover officers who pretended to be on the adjacent payphone because at the 7-Eleven there was always two payphones on the wall, side by side. So they got an undercover to stand at the other payphone and act like they were talking on the phone when they were really just listening to what the hell Dana was talking about. Joel was talking about, so they could listen to what Joel was talking about. And what they were hearing was Joel talking to Dana about money. In one conversation, Joel was heard saying, I don't want stock options. I want $250,000 and I want it now. I want to go around the world. They also heard Joel talking about laying low and saying things like, I haven't talked to anybody and they have nothing. The police, when pagers were a thing, could basically make a copy of your pager in a way so that any time your pager went off and a number came up, their copy of it would display the same number you were seeing.
In real time, too, right? Just to be clear? Yeah.
Right. So they're watching these clone pagers, and they see Joel gets a page from a guy named Jack Ponce. Ponce was a friend of both Joel and his brother Peter. They also learned that Ponce owned a Feather Industries 9mm rifle, which he purchased just days before the Ewell murders.
Suspicious.
When investigators paid Ponce a visit, he initially denied knowing anything about anything. When they asked about the gun, he said he bought it to kill possums in the attic.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was kind of the police reaction, too. They weren't buying it. They asked to see it, and wouldn't you know, he said it had been stolen.
Oh, man, I hate when that happens.
Now, since it was not their very first day on the job, they didn't buy that load of bull either. It took some time. Investigators had to stay on it. 3 years after the murders, in March 1995, police arrested Ponce. After realizing his goose was cooked, he decided to be a witness for the state and tell the truth. He was given immunity in exchange for his testimony, of course. That certainly lubricates the truth. He told police that he bought the gun for Joel and thought Joel wanted to resell it for a profit. He'd also seen Joel in Peter's garage experimenting with building suppressors for other guns, trying to get it right.
Who is Peter?
Peter is Joel's brother and Ponce's original buddy.
Okay, all right, I'm with you.
One time when Ponce was hanging out in the Radosich garage, he noticed that Joel had fashioned a shell catcher to a gun. I never even considered such a thing until I heard about this, but Joel told Ponce that after firing the gun in the garage one time, he had spent half an hour searching for the casing. He didn't want to have to do that again, so he built this plastic shell catcher dealie that he glued to the side of the gun, and it collected all the expended casings. Firing the gun in the garage still has me a little...
I was going to say, I was a little... I'm still back on firing it in the garage, how that works and what you're shooting it into or whatever, but I don't know if you know what this thing looks like, but whenever it says it's glued to the side of the gun, I'm imagining like a plastic soda bottle just sort of cut in half or just something real kind of janky.
I don't know. I mean,
do you know what it looks like or not?
No,
really?
hell no. I haven't seen it. And my thoughts of gluing a piece of some kind of plastic thing to catch casings onto a metal thing, like I just had bad luck with super glue. It never acts like it's supposed to. So I don't know. So Ponce goes ahead and buys this gun and for Joel and gets $500 for his time. And when he delivered the gun to Joel at Peter's garage, Peter's Joel's brother, Joel told him, hey, give us a while and go ahead and report this thing stolen. I mean, that should be your first clue that something ain't right.
I was going to say, so we've got like a illegal gun transaction, we've got lying, we got all the things here. It sounds like it's going nowhere fast.
Both Ponce and Joel's brother Peter say they saw books about building a silencer, and they called it a silencer, not me.
That's fair. They probably did. They don't know any better.
Books about being a spy, poisons, being a commando, and all this kind of stuff among Joel's belongings the summer before the murders. Both Ponce and Peter denied knowing that Joel was going to commit these murders or any others. Peter said that sometime after the murders, Joel came to his house and said he needed to get out of town and that Peter might see him on America's Most Wanted. Joel wanted Peter to help him out, but Peter refused, and Joel took off.
Now, once Joe Walsh is on the case, man, forget about it. So he's smart to be trying to get out of town before he ends up on that show.
Is it Joe Walsh?
Isn't that his name?
Okay.
Am I wrong?
I don't know. You say Joe Walsh, I'm immediately thinking of that song, I go to parties sometimes until 4. It's hard to leave when you can't find the door. What the heck is that called? Life's Been Good.
Yeah. Oh, man, my bad. John Walsh.
John Walsh, yes, and his son Adam Walsh.
Well,
okay.
in this freaking episode, you got all these names. I feel like you throw out Ringo, and we've got a whole band here. I mean, I'm trying to keep up. So I apologize, John. Excuse me for getting your name wrong. I'm sorry.
So once Joel said, look, I might be on America's Most Wanted, Peter's like, nope, get out of here. So then Ponce says that around April 21st, Joel showed up at the condo where he was staying. Ponce was staying with his girlfriend in this condo, and Joel showed up and was all nervous and paranoid. He meets him in the garage, and Joel puts a cover over his car in the parking garage of this place. And Ponce asked him, what's going on? And Joel's like, it has to do with the triple homicide and me. And Ponce is like, don't tell me anything else. So, now, I believe Ponce was intended to be an attorney, so that might make... I think one of these in the group either Joel or Ponce was planning to be an attorney. I think it was Ponce, and that would make sense why he would say that.
Yeah, he's like, nope, stop right there.
Yeah, don't tell me anymore. A little bit later, the two went for a drive and brainstormed places Joel might go. Ponce said he told Joel that, like, look, if you didn't know what was going to get down for whatever you were involved in, then, you could get a lawyer. And Joel's like, that's not going to work. So at this point, Ponce realizes that Joel might be involved in something beyond just on the fringes or in the wrong place at the wrong time. He also realized that he's the one that registered a gun that was in Joel's possession.
Oops.
Yeah, but no worries because Joel did not plan on keeping the gun. The next day, he told Ponce that he had some things that needed to be gotten rid of. Ponce reached out to Peter. Now, fun fact, Ponce and Peter were originally friends. Ponce met Joel while hanging out with Peter in high school, and they hit it off and enjoyed activities like stealing motorcycles and car parts together.
I mean, doesn't everybody?
Right. But now, back to our regularly scheduled programming already in progress. Joe and Ponce go over to Peter's place where Joel had left the backpack at some point in a container in the garage where he often stored things. He had the stuff inside that bag that needed to go away. Peter and Ponce meet up at Peter's shop and soak the items that were inside this backpack with WD-40 to take care of fingerprints. And then they set out in Peter's car to go get rid of the contents of the backpack and a box of books and magazines, including the How to Make a Silencer book. Inside this backpack was a disassembled Browning pistol with the serial number drilled out, just a hole where the serial number should have been. The disassembled rifle Ponce had purchased, with holes in the barrel and the serial number drilled out. Parts of tennis balls, some sneakers, a broken shell catcher, a brown bag containing shell casings, and a piece of PVC pipe that had been fashioned into a suppressor.
It sounds like that'd be pretty damaging evidence.
It don't sound good.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good.
Peter drove and Ponce jumped out at various locations to dispose of the items, but Peter's wife was blowing up his pager and he had to get home. The only thing left was the barrel of the murder weapon, and Ponce told Peter he'd take care of that on his own. So they get back to Peter's place. Peter's boot scooting it up to, get to his woman that's wanting him home. And Ponce kind of takes a run not too far away from Peter's place, tries to push the barrel down into the ground in this vacant lot field thing. But it wouldn't go. He couldn't get it to push in the ground. So he used his foot and stomped and kicked until he got that barrel down in the ground. Then he went and helped Joel get his car to North Hollywood, where he sort of just stashed it and put a cover on it, and then he took Joel to a hotel. 2 hotels, actually, because the first one required a photo ID, and Joel was not really into people knowing who he was.
I think I can understand why at this point.
Right. So Ponce stays connected to Joel, who later told him what he had done in disturbing detail, and how he shaved his entire body the day of the murders because he knew he was going to be in the house for a while and would need to use the bathroom and did not want to leave any hairs behind.
That's commitment. But also, I mean, how wouldn't somebody in this guy's life have noticed that he was all of a sudden like a hairless Sphinx cat? Like, how do you explain that away? I mean, that's not you dye your hair or whatever, but you shave all the hair off your body. I feel like somebody's going to notice that.
That's a good point.
Maybe he didn't have any other friends except for his criminal friends, and so they just didn't care. I mean, I have questions.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, Dana's going to get it if he sees it. And as far as old Ponce, he doesn't seem like he's like, no questions asked. Sure, I'll go dispose of these guns and things after you've intimated that you've been involved in a triple homicide.
Right. And it's not like stuff that's like trash you throw off a bridge. It's very clearly all like highly probable or probative evidence of a crime.
Right.
Namely a murder. But this dude's rolling around looking like the king of Persia from the movie 300 and nobody's batting an eye. I'm not sure I get it. But wow.
Yeah, I would have problems. Joel even explained how he waited in the laundry room for Tiffany to walk past and then stepped out and shot her in the back of the head. How Glee must not have noticed because she kept talking, and that he shot her multiple times. How he hid and waited for Dale to walk past him and then stepped out behind him and shot him in the back of the neck and something came out of his eye. He also explained how he pushed hard with his hands on each victim's forearm to make sure they didn't have a pulse. And Ponce did explain to Joel that that's not how you check a pulse. I mean, obviously they didn't, but yeah. So Joel didn't just tell Ponce what he had done, he also told him why, for the $8 million payout that he thought he was going to get half of. Ponce told investigators that he never related to Peter that Joel had actually confessed to the Ewell murders because he didn't want Peter to be any deeper in this than he already was. Which, I mean, he just helped get rid of, like, that treasure trove of god-awful evidence. Anyway, a few days after Ponce's arrest, Peter was arrested. He agreed to cooperate with the state and testify against his little brother in exchange for immunity.
Funny how that, like you said, that truth serum.
Fields and vacant lots in Los Angeles, from what I understand, don't stay fields or vacant lots for very long. Seems like there's a big parking lot business out there. I don't know. But they had to at least look and see if the burial site of this barrel was now covered by a building or concrete. And to their surprise, the lot was still vacant, and they found the barrel exactly where Ponce said it was. The firearms examiner cleaned it up, did some test fires, and sure enough, it was the murder weapon. He also found steel wool pieces inside the barrel. Steel wool was one of the components of the homemade silencer, suppressor, from the book, and Ponce recalled Joel using steel wool in his experimental silencer suppressor builds. Police also recovered some stuff from Joel's mother's home, including tennis balls that had been cut in half and a set of drill bits. On the drill bits, they found the same bright yellow fibers as the tennis balls and those at the crime scene, along with matching rubber particles and drilled metal shavings consistent with the gun barrel.
So this guy liked to do some woodworking and play tennis. What's the big deal?
I think that would be metalworking. Joel and Dana go on trial together with separate defense attorneys, which sounds like just a circus to me. And they also had separate defense strategies. Dana's lawyer went with the he's innocent strategy, while Joel's lawyer felt that based on the amount of evidence, a guilty verdict was almost certain and focused on just keeping Joel from getting the lethal injection. To that end, Joel's attorney accomplished his goal, albeit less lofty than what Dana's attorney was shooting for. After an 8-month-long trial, the jury deliberated for 11 days and convicted Dana and Joel of first-degree murder with enhancements for multiple victims, murder for profit, and murder committed by lying in wait. Now, the jury could not reach an agreement on the sentencing, though, and the judge ended up declaring a mistrial in the sentencing phase and entered the default sentence of life without parole ×3 for both Dana and Joel.
You know, based on what you've said, it sounds like the defense lawyers must have done a pretty decent job, because if you're not using the death penalty on a guy who kills his whole family for their money, then who are you using it for? And I'm not trying to get into my personal thoughts or opinions on the death penalty here. That's not my point. But I just mean the facts of this case make it the sort of case where I think it'd be more likely than not that we'd see the jury make that recommendation.
It certainly does seem like a death penalty candidate case, that's for sure. And it seems like Dana's whole strategy was, I don't know, nothing about nothing. I had no idea. You know, he just kind of dumps it right on his friend.
Yeah.
And I think the only, and I don't think anybody bought that, but, you know, Joel's probably only saving grace was he was manipulated by Dana. That'd be my only guess is what they had going on. I can't really say.
Yeah.
And Ponce and Peter, they got out of it all together by saying, yep, we'll tell you everything we know. But listen, there is some icing on this cake. After his family had died, you know, they'd all been murdered because he commissioned their murder, he became the executor of his elderly grandmother's trust account. I think she was in her 90s. Now, this was Glee's mother, who was also named Glee.
Wait a second. So, Glee's mom had a daughter, and they named her Glee, too.
Yes.
So, you had Glee, and Glee had a daughter named Glee, and then that daughter had Dana.
No, yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Just making sure I'm tracking with what you're saying.
Yeah, you're with me. Glee's mother's name was Glee.
Wow. Okay.
Now, when Dana took over Grandma's money, she had about $400,000 in the account.
Get it, Grandma?
3 years later, it was down to $2,000.
Oh.
And it doesn't seem like this money was spent on a fancy walker or polygrip for grandma. The transactions off the trust account included $17,000 to the University of San Diego, where Dana's girlfriend Monica Zent was going to law school, $40,000 written directly to Monica, $11,000 for flying lessons for Dana and Joel, and then over $200,000 to retain an attorney after he was arrested.
Wow, that is crazy. That's really sad.
If for no other reason, this alone, what he did, stealing his grandma's money for whatever, that makes him a bag of shit. Mm. If he already wasn't one for killing his whole family, and if he already wasn't one for just being a prick.
Yeah, I feel like he's got it in spades, Bob.
If anybody'd like to connect with Dana Ewell, he is currently, as of today, has a profile on inmate.com.
You spend a lot of time there?
It came up when I was researching for this case. I'm looking for information about the guy, and this thing pops up, and it's like I guess it's the social media for inmates to meet other people, and he says he likes to meet new people.
I'll pass, but he should connect with Omaima Nelson. They sound perfect for each other.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us on the Brothers in Crime podcast. Feedback and suggestions are always welcome. For links and resources related to this episode, please see the show notes or visit us at brothersincrimepodcast.com. We hope you'll save, subscribe, or bookmark us on your favorite podcast site and join us for the next episode.